بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. Hello ladies and gentlemen, we meet again in this series of lesson of teaching English. Our lesson is for the second back. There are two tenses, the past perfect and the past perfect continuous. These two tenses, the past perfect and the past perfect continuous, are directly related to the tense, the simple past. So, if you haven't watched the simple past yet, please watch it so as to make things clear for you to understand the past perfect and the past perfect continuous. You will find the link of the simple past video in the description under this video. The past perfect and the past perfect continuous. We'll start by the past perfect. So the form of the past perfect is simply the auxiliary had plus the past participle form of the verb. The past participle form of the verb for regular verbs, for normal verbs, is just the verb with an ed at the end. For example, had watched, had called, had arrived. But the problem here is that there are some irregular verbs which does not accept the ed at the end, but it totally changes. They are the same verbs that changes in the simple past. They change it in the past participle as well. For example, here we have just 3 examples to illustrate these verbs: speak, spoke, spoken, write, wrote, written, built, built, built. So the past participle is in this column with the red color. So you'll find the list of these irregular verbs in the description under the video. So the affirmative of the past perfect is very simple. I had finished, you had finished, he had finished, she had finished, it had finished, we had finished, you had finished, they had finished. Just the auxiliary and the verb and ed if the verb is normal. Concerning negative, we just add the negation to the auxiliary had. We say I had not finished, or the contracted form I hadn't finished. So the contracted form is the most often used in this case. You hadn't finished, he hadn't finished, she hadn't finished, it hadn't finished, we hadn't finished, you hadn't finished, they hadn't finished. Concerning the interrogative, the questions, we just invert the subject with the auxiliary had. Had I finished? Had you finished? Had he finished? Etc. So, number 2, the use of the past perfect. So when 2 actions happened in the past and we want to mention which action happened first, we put it in the past perfect. The second action is put in the simple past. That is to say, when we have 2 actions that happened both in the past and we want to precise and to mention which action happened first. So the first action is put in the past perfect. The second that followed it is put in the simple past. And the importance of the simple past is illustrated here. Examples: I did not have any money because I had lost my wallet. So the action of losing the wallet happened before the fact of not having money. Number 2, had Susan ever studied Arabic before she moved to Morocco? So the action of moving to Morocco happened in the past, but the question is, before she moved to Morocco, had she ever studied Arabic? Number 3, we were not able to get a hotel room because we had not booked in advance. So the action of not finding a room happened in the past. It was a result of an action which happened before it. It is the fact of not booking in the hotel in advance. There are some remarks or some notes which you have to pay attention to. Is the adverbs before and after. They are used a lot with sentences containing the simple past and the past perfect. Note that when you use before, you have to put after it the simple past immediately. But when you use after, you put the past perfect. Examples: before my father arrived home, I had already finished my homework. So here, before, we use after it, we use the simple past, arrived. Number two, after Susan had finished her studies, she got the promotion. So after, here we use after it, we use had finished, the past perfect. So be careful because it is mostly given in exercises in exams. The second note is that some adverbials or some adverbs like already, ever, never, just, etc., they are frequently used with the past perfect and the simple past, with the past perfect, sorry. So the position of these adverbs should be immediately before the verb. For example, before Alex spent his salary, he had already saved some money for the birthday. So already is placed immediately before the verb, before the main verb saved. He had never seen such a beautiful place before he went to India. So never is placed immediately before seen. Concerning the past perfect continuous, its form, we have had, the auxiliary had plus the auxiliary been plus present participle. And present participle is too simply the verb plus ing. And here we have now irregular verbs. All the verbs got the ing. So it is more simpler than, or we don't say simpler, but it is easier than the past perfect which we saw just now. So example, had been watching, had been calling, had been arriving. Concerning the affirmative, I had been finishing, you had been finishing, he had been finishing, etc. The negative, we just usually we put, or always we put the negative to the auxiliary had. I had not been finishing, or we use the contracted form. I hadn't been finishing, you hadn't been finishing, he hadn't been finishing, and the contracted form is often used. Concerning the questions, interrogative, we just invert the, as we saw with the past perfect, we just invert the auxiliary had with the subject. Had I been finishing, had you been finishing, had he been finishing, etc. Concerning the use of the past continuous, the past perfect continuous refers to action which happened before the past and continued up to the past. It has the sense of continuation. So the past perfect continuous happened before the past, like the past perfect. But unlike the past perfect continuous continued up to the past. So it has the sense of continuation. That is to say, it happened before an action in the past and continued up to that action in the past. Let's see some examples so as things become clear. Number one, I had been working at the company for 5 years when I got the promotion. So I got the promotion happened in the past. Before it, I had been working at the company for 5 years. So this the action of working continued happened before getting the promotion and continued up to getting the promotion. Number two, Martha had been walking 3 miles a day before she broke her leg. So Martha broke her leg in the past, but before it, she had been walking for 3 miles, and this action of walking continued up to the action of breaking her leg. So this is all what can be said about the past perfect and the past perfect continuous. So I hope things become clear now. If you have any question or anything that seems unclear for you, please don't hesitate to leave your question in the comments under this video. Goodbye and see you later.